Okay, the way that you can change the display on your end effectors there, or your handles, is if you select on the handle, you come over here to the motion panel, scroll down, you have the IK options here, and here where it says gold display, here's the end effector display, I have that off. So the gold display is enabled. You can actually shut that off altogether if you want, but what I usually do is just scale it down, and in this case I'll just do 10. That way they're not so large at this scale. It's easier to grab them without grabbing the rest of them. And I won't have any problem. Alright, so the next step is fixing our mesh. So we've posed our character, and we see that there's that our mesh is not deforming well, and this is a great reason why you want to test your mesh by rigging it. Is what we're going to do is go ahead in here and adjust this the skin weights. So we select on the mesh, and we still have our skin modifier on there. What we're going to do is select on envelopes, which highlights or depresses the edit envelope key. Vertices is on, and we're going to go down here and select the bone weighting so we can see what's going on. And in this case, we're going to turn on smooth. Now the reason we want to do that, actually edge faces, is so that we can see exactly what's going on without the interference of the back mesh. But we want to make sure that we're not selecting on these, because we'll be selecting on vertices in the back as well. So we can get a good look at this, and we can see that everything is hard weighted still. Nothing has transition weighting on it. So where the skin is deforming is where these verts are 100% weighted to this bone. Where they're not weighted at all. So the weighting that we have is 2 bone weighting, so you can see that the influence for these particular verts is on the clavicle. So what we want to do is draw the weight to the bone that we want to affect, give the effect to those verts. And we'll go ahead and select these as an example. And we know that we want to weight some of those to this upper arm. So we'll come down here to weight properties where it says absolute effect, and we'll begin to dial that up a little bit. Let's grab all these around here. And then we'll go ahead and dial that up, and we're influencing the way that this shape is going to look. But all the while you need to make sure that you are keeping the anatomy in mind. So if you have, your chest wall here, and your ribs are coming out here, and you've got muscles, your pec and your shoulder muscles and so forth, you're not going to get a clean effect here. Because if I start weighting these down and giving them just trying to blend the weights without thinking about how that structure is, you can see that I'm not going to get very accurate effect of how that chest wall should look. We would get better blending between the bones. So it's a fine line that we riggers walk, especially on low resolution meshes like this. It's actually no different for high res. It's just harder because there's a whole lot more verts to manage. So another reason why we want to make sure that things are keyed. And when you're weighting verts, you never want to have keys on because it will animate them. So you can take a good look at that now. And a part of it is also the fact that these are 100% weighted to this bone only, so we can go ahead and share the weighting with this bone. We'll give it up 50% to start. Since this ring is so close to that one, we'll go ahead and give it some effect also. So now when you scrub through this animation, you can begin to see that we're getting a less harsh deformation there, even though we have a lot of work to do on this particular pose. So that should give you enough information to go on to correct any areas like that. Again, we want to pull the weighting to the bones, so we want to go in here. Keep in mind that you're selecting on the back side as well, and that's why I like to work in wireframe. So if you select the front, go back here and make sure that you hold the Alt key down, deselect what's back there before you start to dial that influence up for those front birds. You may not want that same influence on the back. Do the front and back differently at different times. You'll have to view that. That's already too much. Alright, so I think you get the idea. And you'll probably pick poses that are less twisted than this, but it's a good idea to pick the pose that you want and then continue to work the mesh accordingly. Of course, in games, you're going to want to work the mesh in a lot of different key poses, extreme poses, arms up, arms down, arms in back, arms in front. That's why we did what we did with the legs, is you want to hit all those major key poses that your character will actually be in and check all the poses. And that's the really interesting part, is making sure that that mesh looks the best that it can be, deforming in all the poses, not just one. Alright, so let's continue fixing the weights on our skin here, and when we get a little bit more work done, I'll be back to show you how we can finish up our characters for our portfolio.